Welcome to Shine On, a homeschool mom podcast for moms who are looking to get into a new career. I'm Ashley Tarter, and I'm here with my friend Beth Autery. Say hi.
Hey, everyone.
And she is going to talk to us today about real estate. But first, let me say, I love it when people like and subscribe to Shine On and share it with their friends. So please do that. And also, if you listen to this podcast or one of them and you think, oh, I know someone who's perfect for this, please go to our link tree and there's a interview space at the bottom where you can fill out a form and it'll tell me, here's my friend who would love to be interviewed, or I haven't told them about it yet, but you can contact them. And that'll help me keep going with more and more people who have shined on into new careers. So we are going to jump right in today. Beth, tell me, you are a realtor. Tell me a little bit about how you got into that.
Yeah, Ashley. Well, I guess as a younger person, as a new believer, I really wanted to do ministry type things, which I've really enjoyed having those opportunities with my life, as well as obviously raising my kids. But when I thought about careers, real estate just seemed to fit. It is, in a way, some counseling and some training and education of clients. The biggest decision people make financially. And it's a process, and we're all about the process. So it seemed like a good fit for me, and I wasn't going to be a NASA scientist. So I needed something I needed someone in the people field. So that's how I ended up here.
Awesome. So, yeah, talk about what you did before, because a lot of times homeschool moms end up doing something completely different from, what their degree is in or what they thought they would be doing. Talk
Sure.
about
Sure.
your before kids
My
time.
before kids. So I got my undergrad in political science and sociology from the University of Richmond. And while I was there, I became a believer, and that kind of changed my trajectory. I didn't want to change my major at that point because honestly, I just wanted to get out. And so I stayed with that. I worked for a missions ministry for a few years and then went back to grad school at Regent University for counseling. That was my plan, was to do counseling in groups, but I was fortuitously interrupted by 4 beautiful children and a whole different lifestyle in raising them and homeschooling. Then when the opportunity came back, I tried when they were little, and I don't know what I was thinking as a homeschool mom that I could do real estate. But for those wondering, it does not lend itself to a part-time career. I put it on hold, and then when the time was right, decided to come back to it.
Great. So, you graduated 4 kids.
I did.
And then what kind of training was involved to become a licensed realtor?
Well, this is funny because Ashley also is a licensed realtor.
That's right. So I know the questions to
She knows
ask.
the answers. It's actually probably one of the simplest entries of what I would call a professional career that there is. Basically, you can take a training online or you can attend a class. There's multiple different ways to do it. I'm a proponent of an in-person training just because I learn better that way, but you do you. And then there's an exam you take, and obviously there's a national piece and then there's state-specific pieces. So, for example, I took my first test in Texas and passed obviously the state and the U.S. part. And subsequently, when I've taken the test, I've only had to take it in the state for the state-specific part of where I am. So I've now done that 3 times because I let it lapse in different parts of my career. And so all that to say, you can do it. It's not that hard. That part's the easy part.
Right, right. And I'm a proponent of online education for this because you can just do it at your own pace. You can do it as fast as you want. And I think it's great if you do your online class fast because it just sticks in your head. And then you
Truth.
take your test and then well, yeah, you basically have your license at that point. You have to go through a little bit of stuff with the state and fingerprinting and background check to actually be licensed by in Virginia at least, Department of Professional and Occupational Regulations, right?
It's pretty good.
That's what it stands for.
Affectionately called DPOR.
Yes, we call it DPOR. But when you decided you wanted to do this, what did you think it would be like versus how it turns
Uh,
out?
I think in honesty, I really had some pretty magical thinking. I thought, wow, I know people and people trust me. So I'll just tell them I'm a realtor and I'll suddenly have business. That was not my experience. So I think it took me about a year of realizing this is going to actually be a lot of work to start. Now, obviously, everybody has a different trajectory. I was in a situation where I needed to earn full-time income. Lots of people don't. It's a side thing and they don't have to do that. So I tell everybody it's your journey. But for me, it took me a year for me to wise up and realize I'm going to really have to put a lot of effort into it. And there's lots of different ways to acquire clients in real estate. There's not one way. Any realtor you talk to will tell you different ways to do it. And I would say probably an amalgamation of a few is the right way to do it and to find your bent. But it took me a little while and then progressively got better and better.
Yeah. And so going back to when you first take your class, how many hours does it take to get a real estate license?
I've done it so long ago. You might know the answer to that better. It's pretty short. It's a pretty short window, and like you said, you could do it online or whatever, and then it's an exam. And honestly, whether you do it online or other ways you're training, the practice exams that are pretty standardized are self-correcting. There's only so many questions, so many things. So often, if you just keep taking the quizzes, you will eventually pass the test. But I would say that the test is not a measure of the knowledge you will need by any stretch. I would say that's 5 or 10%, and most of the rest is learned by on-the-job training and getting around other people who've had a lot of experience and just being in a place where you hear them and interact with them. I highly recommend that.
Yeah. So in Virginia, I think it's 60 hours.
Ok.
And in Florida, I think it's around 60. It might be 45, it might be 75, but not very many hours. For me, part of my calculation was there are 168 hours in a week, and I can do 60 hours in 1 week. And I just learned it all and crammed it all. But to your point, what we learned was not actually anything related to day real estate. It's all the laws, and it's kind of the process and all of the anomalous situations where what if this? And then
Mhm.
you have to know the legal piece of things. But like you said, it's about 5 to 10% of what we do. So what's the rest, Beth?
Well, I mean, I think, like I kinda wanted to say, I think this is really important. We're in a culture now where we are, obviously Americans, we're very independent. We have the freedom to work from our own home and in our own, hide in a room and do work. But I would say for the new agent, you will learn a tremendous amount if you end up with a brokerage where you can physically show up on your time and be in the mix of hearing what's happening. You'll hear other agents talk about snags they're happening, how to navigate challenges. You will learn a tremendous amount just by being there. And obviously, everybody's time is different, but I would say it's a critical piece. You'll learn a ton versus from a textbook.
Right, right. And my brokerage had a lot of onboard training.
Yes.
So they throw you in the deep end, but at the same time, they're helping you. A good brokerage is going to help you out a lot.
Yes.
And I think now is especially a great time to get into real estate because of the emergence of AI in the last couple years. So anyone who's coming in, in 26, 27, all the AI tools make things easier and you don't have to relearn
Correct.
anything.
Yes.
For us, we're having to relearn things.
100%. 100%. One thing I will say about real estate is it is a very fluid industry, and I've been full-time probably for the last 9 or so years. Um, Along with changing brokerages, there's just about every year or so, there's pretty dramatic changes that you have to get on top of and stay on top of, and that's kind of why I said, um, the challenge to somebody that's part-time and only puts a few hours a week to it is it's very difficult to stay on top of just I mean, even our forms change, the legalities change, and if you're not on top of it, you really aren't able to help your clients the way you should. So that's just kind of a thing. And yes, any good brokerage is going to have amazing training. And one thing I'll say is where I am with now, not only is there great trainings that happen in real life, but they have so many recorded. Again, 2 a.m. you can't sleep, feel free to, listen in on some great trainings on how to use XYZ in your business or how to handle, I don't know, water on the property.
Dick. All kinds of things we never
That's
thought
right,
we were gonna need to
RPAs.
know. Yeah, so that made me think, just going back to those first couple weeks when you pass your test and you get your background check. But then it's really important to interview brokerages, right? And they're
Yes.
not so much interviewing you as you're interviewing them.
Correct.
So, what are some good questions to ask a brokerage?
Well, I would say, one of the top things is any decent brokerage is gonna have some education component, find out about that. The second thing is they have very different compensation structures and how and sorry, let me see how to say it. You're gonna be compensated based on production you do, obviously. The reason Ashley just said you're interviewing them is it's not a job where you get paid XYZ a week for showing up and sitting at your desk. The only compensation you're receiving is from the production you yourself do. Now, your brokerage could theoretically give you leads and you might pay for those, but nonetheless, it's your work. So definitely find out how that works, who trains you, what kind of supervision there's going to be. Or is that somebody who's really available to you and is going to answer your questions? Or is it more ephemeral than that? Because you're going to be very, I don't want to say insecure, but probably insecure as you start. And you're going to want someone who you can go to pretty regularly to ask questions. Are there, go and get a feeling for the office. Are there agents that actually show up there? Are there people there during the day? If you come to work, is there someone there? Is there somebody that's got 5, 10, 20 years of experience that if the broker's busy would take 15 minutes with you and give you some advice? Because there are always strange things that rear their head, and that's when you want people to run things by.
Yeah. And I think for me, it helped seeing kind of a family atmosphere. I'm in a local brokerage that's just in our region. It's not one of the national brokerages. Um, and we do feel like a family. We have our own events and we share a lot of research and resources with each other. And there's always someone who, it's always really nice if there's someone who is new and wants to do open houses and, just to be able to share back and forth within your own brokerage, instead of everyone kind of being out for themselves.
I think Ashley makes a really good point with a point that I didn't hit, and that is there's an atmosphere there. There's kind of a vibe or a feeling, and I've had the privilege of both places that I've worked, but even more so this brokerage I'm with now. Uh, we're not paying each other to do stuff. We just have each other's backs, and so if I was out of town and I need someone to show some property for me, they'll do it, and then vice versa, I'll do it for them.
It's
Someone's
not like that
not like
everywhere.
that everywhere. I'm out driving and I can't pull something up online because it's not working. There's multiple people that I know and I'll just call and they'll get that information for me in real time. And so finding a place like that has great value because you will want people to help you.
Right. And that's not on a website.
No,
And they can say whatever they want on their website. But it's really key to go in and meet people, not just the broker, but some of the other realtors who work there.
absolutely.
And, some of them are just too busy for you. And
Mhm.
so you just have to, be ready for that. You said one thing that just reminded me of something. One reason I think homeschool moms end up doing really well in real estate, 'cause I think you and I both have several friends who are realtors, is because as homeschool moms, we've learned to ask good questions, right? And so I'm kind of fast forwarding to like what people think of in real estate. It's listing houses and showing houses, and getting to know people and that
Mhm.
kind of thing, and just being able to ask good questions of your clients so that you can know what they're looking for, right? But what other things would you think of in that skills that you developed as a homeschool mom that end up helping in real
Sure.
estate?
I think, obviously relationship building, and building the people you're connected to is critical, even among other, as you're working, Ashley and I work for different brokerages, but we have opportunities to show each other's houses, to work in transactions. And so we've learned and taught our children how do you work with other people? How do you work with people that have different styles? So those skills, communication. One thing I've noticed is there's a generation of agents that don't want to talk to you. They're going to text you. They're only going to text you. I tell my clients, I think you are benefited by the fact that I call the other agent. I listen to what they say because they might give me information that's helpful for my clients to know about their property. that isn't in the listing. I might find out how motivated that seller is or snags they've had. So I think a lot of these soft skills that we don't give ourselves credit for are critical because we're not afraid to talk and to
Mhm.
listen. And you can learn a lot in this business by doing those two things.
Yeah. And at the beginning, you said that, you went into this thinking, will people trust me? But I do think that that's like a huge thing that homeschool moms have is that we have a natural sincerity about
Yeah,
us. And just being able to connect with people and gain their trust very quickly makes for a good realtor
for sure.
because you're right there in, a fairly intimate decision between, either husband and wife or families. Sometimes children are involved, adult children are involved with
Yes.
parents. So being able to be a trustworthy person and communicate trustworthiness just naturally
Yes.
is something that homeschool moms have.
I think so, and I think the other thing is, real estate is an odd business in that, obviously we're paid off of homes that we are able to help our clients buy or sell. Um, there's a differential, right? There's a $300,000 house and $1 million house or whatever, and I think by the fact that we treat people the same, that that we have the same sincerity of saying like, "Hey, I'm here to serve you. My goal is your goal. So what do you want? What do you need? Do you need to do this quickly? Do you need the highest number? Do you need help with contractors? Do you need us to talk to your parents because it's their home and it's gonna be very hard for them to leave?" And so I think those skills of being able to say like, "Look, yes, obviously this is my livelihood and yes, of course I want a successful transaction, but I actually care and I wanna help you achieve your goal. Talk to me about that." I think that brings people's defenses down to where they go, "Oh, this person does wanna do a good job for me and does wanna help me."
Yeah.
And not everybody's like that.
And I think when people think of homeschool moms, where obviously any mom is very helpful to their children, for no pay,
Right.
right? And then they think, okay, well, I like to help. And you automatically, in my mind, you either go to nursing or teaching, right? But real estate is another place where it
Yes.
really attracts helpers
Yes.
and people who are helping people through a major transition in their life. And, usually it's for happy reasons, but, there are always going to be some hurdles. Another thing I feel like you get good at, especially when you raise the teenagers, is problem solving and sometimes difficult personalities. There's usually some kind of problem that has to be solved creatively during a real estate transaction, and being able to think outside the box is huge, right?
1,000%. I think one thing is if you are someone who's very, I don't know how you navigate homeschooling your children if this is true, but if you're somebody that really wants a desk job where you just show up and you do the same task every day, it's probably not your field. But if you probably have a little bit of a neurodivergent brain and like variety, like challenges, like things being different, really real estate is that because you will go through a transaction and think, this is so smooth, it's so perfect. And then at the ninth hour, all of these things will raise their head, within 24 hours of closing, and you will do some dramatic dancing. And I always say it's the paddle real hard under the water. And so we try to work for our clients in a way that they don't know. We're smiling. They don't know all the potential things that are happening, but we're trying to solve them before. And then sometimes we have to tell them. But the idea being that if you like that kind of thing, if you enjoy a challenge and you are willing to understand that this business it's not boring. If you are an accountant, this is not for you. Like if that's your personality, that's a great personality. I love my accountant. She's a dear friend. But she would hate my job and I would hate hers. But if you like the challenge of new things every day, that is real estate.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons I went into it because I cannot do the same thing every day
Right.
after homeschooling. For 13 years, I think we get used to the flexible schedule. We get used to, kind of working all hours and doing something different every day. And
Mhm.
so people will sometimes ask, they're like, well, what does a typical day look like? And you just laugh your head off, right? You're just
What is a
like,
typical day?
yeah, let's go with that. So, but there are maybe 5 or 6 kinds of typical days,
Sure.
right? So I think a lot of people are like, okay, I could be a realtor because like I can make a house look prettier by staging it for the pictures, or I could be a realtor because I can read contracts, whatever, or I can be a realtor because I like to drive around and look at pretty houses, which I
Right.
do. But that is not every day, all day. So maybe take us through like a typical, well, I guess if you're interacting with a family that's about to list their home, um, that's one kind of typical day,
Right,
right?
right.
Because you're talking to them about maybe updates they need to do, knickknacks they should put away, animals they need to get off the property,
Correct.
right? And so, talk to us about like when you're going to list a home, what are some important things that you should remember?
Sure, sure. I mean, listing and on the buy side, those are very different. The benefit of a listing is typically you have a little bit of a time frame to accomplish your goals, right? Within what the client wants and what you can work, you are negotiating updates or repairs that the clients want to get before you have photographs taken, and then all these things in place. Are you going to stage the home? Who's going to pay for staging the home? We always have professional photography. Please don't pick a realtor that doesn't do professional photography. So you have kind of a time frame and you have these goals you want to accomplish, and all those are in communication with your client. So you're meeting with the client, you're talking to them about what's the most important thing. Is it a fast sale because they're moving and they need that cash to purchase their new home? They're in the military or they've gotten a job move. Or is it, hey, we can buy without selling this. So we really want top dollar and we want to make all the improvements to get the top. And it doesn't matter if it takes a little time. So really a lot of it is again always it's talking to your client about what are their goals and how to meet them. We have certain things we do when we list a house, and it changes a little bit, but there's a pretty standard set of things we're going to do for everybody. How we do it is going to be tailored to that particular client and what they want. So it's a lot of asking and listening and hearing what they're not saying.
Right, right. Hearing what they're not saying. I think this bright green room looks perfectly modern. And then to be able to tactfully tell someone, no, you really do need to repaint that room,
That
right?
room needs to be done, right. And walking that tightrope, right? You're trying to build a relationship, some rapport and some trust. So you don't wanna go in, guns blazing, like, "This is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life," even if that's how you feel. You wanna just say, like, "Hey," remind them one of the big things we tell our sellers is, like, "Your house is going from your special place, to a commodity. You're selling a product. So it's beautiful that you have a whole gallery wall of your children from birth teen. It really is beautiful, and I would have that in my home, but to sell this home, we really want to neutralize that. It needs to in this crazy day and age, you don't really need them seeing your grandchildren and all that, but even beyond that, we want them to imagine putting their furniture in and their pictures on the wall, so
I think both showed the same house this week. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so then and then there's paperwork. For me at one point when I was much younger, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And now that I deal with contracts every day, I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not a lawyer because I deal with it a little bit, but not a lot. Right? And you have to be able to read a contract
Mhm,
and remember the finer details because usually contracts come down to the small details, right?
absolutely.
But at the same time, it doesn't end up being too boring.
No, we have the interesting privilege in Virginia where we are of having multiple contracts we use. There are places where there's huge areas where they really only use one contract, but we have multiple contracts that come across our desk. So we have to be at least familiar enough and proficient enough. There's one I use very rarely, maybe once a year I see it, but I have to just remember I don't know this. I'm going to have to slow down. We have a lot of timelines in the contract, and as a client, people don't need to know that because we're guarding those numbers. But there are timelines for home inspections and appraisals and HOA documents and money changing hands. And every one of those is different, and every one of them on different contracts is different. And so a good agent wakes up at 2 a.m. and, sometimes goes, but we have all those written down. We're keeping track of them. We're watching them and we're trying to stay well inside of them. So there is a real creative, people-oriented part of this, and then there's also a very specific, detailed contractual side, and you have to manage both. And when you get a certain level of excellence in your business, you can hire people to do the pieces you don't like as much. But at the beginning, you're gonna be doing all of it.
Yeah, which is just like homeschooling,
That's right,
right?
that's right.
Everyone out there, you've done it
You've
all.
done it all. You can't farm everything out.
Right, exactly. But yeah, maybe you didn't like geometry, so you find someone to teach your kid geometry.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then there are other days when, and this is the thing I think that people overlook when they think about real estate because it's a sales job, right? And so there are the days where you just have to be quote unquote pounding the pavement, right? And shaking trees to get the acorns to fall out, whatever that
That's right.
is.
That's right.
And so a lot of times brokerages will promise you leads. And I think almost every realtor I know thinks, that's not legit, right? Like
Right.
brokerages very rarely
Have a lot
actually
to
give you very many leads. So it really does fall on your own shoulders to talk to everybody you know and let
yes.
them know you're a realtor.
Yes.
But then also lead generation.
Correct.
So talk about that and what's challenging about that and what
Well
you enjoy about it.
well, 9 years in, I'll say this is that, you know, real estate is a business where you have a business, you have a job. Your job is to take care of clients, whatever that looks like. So either you're gonna help them buy a home or you're gonna help them sell a home or decide not to. But you also are an entrepreneur, right? You're in business for yourself. So the only way to stay in business is to create more clients, to bring more people to you. I always say, like, I don't have, the best social media presence. I'm sure it's like a 26-year-old that does. But if I can get to the person, if I can get to the client and spend time with them, they'll pick me because I'm going to take great care of them and they hear that. But I can't serve anybody that I don't come in contact with. So there's lots of ways to lead generate. I mean, there's old school ways. There's, although don't know if anyone ever door knocks anymore, but there's, from the, okay, Ashley still door knocks. Okay. So there's door knocking. We can take advantage if we have a listing of reaching out to people in the neighborhood, inviting them to an open house. We can send out postcards where we've sold or are working in a neighborhood. We can call it farming a neighborhood, decide there's a neighborhood or two, usually the one you live in and maybe one or two others where you go, I'm going to continually reach out to these people and try to build a relationship so they know my name and they think of me when it comes. Obviously, your friends and family, the people that you already know and trust, these are people that you want to continue that relationship with and have some kind of a regular connection to. That can be text, it can be emails, it can be calls, it can be client parties, it can be parties you have for people that are just in your sphere of people you know. We just did a coffee party with a coffee shop in town. We do elaborate Christmas parties, but you can't spend, $1 million on everything. But we had a great drop-in coffee party where we contracted with a local coffee shop and had desserts and coffee and teas for clients. And it was just a drop-in event to say, like, hey, we appreciate we see you and we want to stay in relationship with you. Obviously, when you're starting out, you don't have, 10 years of clients to work with, but you do have people that know and trust you. Meeting with those people, talking to those people, staying in a relationship with those people, and reminding them, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And the best thing you can do is refer somebody to me that I can help. That's a critical, I would say, like, that's probably the first place to start. You can have a great social media presence. You can do all this investment into emailing and mailing documents and letters and updates to people, but your people, the people that know and trust you, those are perfect, right? Because they already believe you'll do a great job. So they're going to tell their neighbor or their daughter, hey, go to Ashley, go to Beth. They'll take great care of you. And I would say that's a critical
And I
place.
think with homeschooling, we've raised our kids together, right? Like we trust each other in a way that like Marines in a foxhole
That's
trust each
right.
other, right?
That's right. And you know all the dirt, right?
Exactly. And so, like, even if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, okay, I've decided I'm not going to be a realtor, but one of your friends becomes a realtor,
Yes.
give them referrals,
That's right. That's
like,
right.
and if you do decide to become a realtor from this podcast or for any reason, don't be afraid to say to your friends, hey, like, who do you know who might be buying or selling, this coming spring or this coming summer? And let them know that those are going to be your highest quality leads
Percent.
because
100%.
you you came to them organically,
Yes.
right? Or they
Yes.
came to you organically.
Yes.
Yeah.
They already trust you. If someone is, if someone's interviewing 3 to 5 agents to see who's a good person to list their house, right? You're interviewing for a job. And honestly, like, yes, probably one of them's not great, but there's probably several that could do a good job, right? And so, you got a good chance, but if you're talking to somebody that, your best friend Sue recommended, you've really got the job and just don't mess it up, right?
Yeah, you've got the upper
You've
hand for
got the
sure.
you've got the opportunity, treat them well, take good care of them, and then ask those once you develop those clients, then those are people that also now you have had a relationship. You've been with them for somewhere between, I don't know, 45 days to 5 years is my longest record from meeting them to closing their house. So you have a relationship at that point. You have met, you've talked on the phone, you've texted, you're emailed, you've met them in person a bunch. Assuming that that went well, which we sure hope it did, then they're going to tell their neighbor or their daughter, just use them. So you kind of have the advantage in the real, you've built relationships with people.
Right, right. And you touched on at the very beginning about how this is a commission-based job.
Yes,
So we love that and we hate it, right?
indeed.
But one of the other people I interviewed, she said the same kind of thing about a commission job. The reason I love it is because there is no ceiling. Like you can literally make as much as you can make.
Correct.
Sometimes that is beholden to the economy and interest rates. And other times, in spite of interest rates, one thing that I've definitely come to realize and do more is pray. It's like just praying in a lot of times. I'll pray and then I'll get a random cold call where they're calling me. And I'm like, how did you get my number? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, it was
Right.
because God told you to call me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
No, it's amazing.
yeah. So so thinking back to like when you're getting started and and like you've learned all this information and you're trying to just go out and get your feet wet and jump in, like where where do you get your very, very first leads from?
So, my first brokerage had, whatever they called, call in, walk in people, right? And if you did a certain amount of answering the phones or whatever it was that there was their protocol, you might be on deck for someone that called in. And I vividly remember that first transaction. It was a $130,000 condo. And I was never more happy and excited to do it, and it took forever, but I was thrilled to do it. Obviously, any broker is gonna tell you, send a letter, send an email to all that you make your list of these people in your life and tell them what you're doing and try to solicit that. Beyond that, I found there are different services, you'll know the names of them that are different portals that have leads for real estate, and you can purchase those. And I remember, the scripture talks about the farmer goes out sowing and is like weeping. And I remember it was $1,200 for my first leads to buy. And I was terrified um, because I was like, but I thought in my mind, I thought logically, I was like, okay, if I have one transaction, it will more than pay for this. And I thought, I can believe that God would bring me one transaction in a year. And so kind of by faith, I threw out my seed and that was a good decision for me and has consistently been a good decision for bringing enough fruit that it's worth it. So sometimes you do have to spend some money in this business to make money, whether that's leads or whether that's being a part of different programs that exist out there that get your name out. There's lots of different things. So sometimes you have to kinda count the cost and go, "Okay, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to invest in myself," which is scary,
Yeah.
but I've found that to be true.
Yeah. And to your point earlier about, the people who know and trust you, obviously a lot of people are going to get leads from the churches that they're part of, right?
Yes.
Um Now that I'm thinking about my first sale, I happened to meet these people like 3 or 4 years earlier at a donut connection for new people, right? So our church has a donut connection once a month and I was the one serving them donuts and then, our boys were the same age and we ended up homeschooling together. And then now become a realtor a couple years later and they were my first clients. And to your point about social media, my second so that was my first buy side. My first sell side client, it was not my neighbor across the street and it was not her mother. It was her son who saw me on Facebook as like a 20 something. And when his grandmother needed a realtor, he said to my neighbor, "Hey, mom, why don't you use Mrs. Tarter across the street for grandma's house?"
Love it.
And so again, these are the people who know you and trust you.
That's right.
Social media plays a part, but I wasn't hitting it really hard. I just was,
Right.
doing the typical stuff that you put on social media about houses, and I've become a realtor and why I love my town and all of those things.
Well, and that's a really good example because they were someone that you had a peripheral relationship with. You'd been a neighbor, you'd lived there a long time. Social media was the thing that kind of tipped the scale because the son saw it. Whereas, if you didn't have a conversation with them, they may not have really realized or wouldn't have come to their mind. So I think it's like a multifactorial approach, okay, right? There's different ways. We're out in public, we're a part of groups, we're a part of churches. We hopefully, have a winning personality when we meet people. We're kind. And then there's opportunities online. And I think all of it, people say like, what do you do? All of it. They say like,
Everything.
who do you serve? All of them, right? Like, I'm not in a place I've never said, like, I'm a niche market, I only do luxury, or I'm a niche market, I only do investors, right? I serve people. That's what I'm there to do. So, whatever the people come to me with, if I'm capable, I help them. If not, I find them the people that can do that for them. But that's how I see it is, and it might be one day that changes and, but to me, that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And, yeah, and then my third first was my first lead that I bought. The reason I distinctly remember it is because she called me on Christmas morning. And I was like,
Who could calls on this?
but I'm like, "It's my first lead,
I'll take
okay."
it.
And, so we chatted and whatever, that took maybe 3, 5 months to find them a place because they were coming in from out of state. But we've stayed in touch, and now they sold that place, and now they bought another place, and so one lead has actually turned into 3 transactions, and plus they've got children who are
Right,
having their grandchildren, which is the whole reason they were moving here was for the
right.
grandkids. So, I find that, and maybe you do too, like, people trust middle-aged women in general. And, we're old enough that we can relate to people who are our parents' age,
Yes.
right? And we're young enough that we don't seem to, you know
Out of it.
right, exactly. We have enough tech savvy that, we can work with people who are first-time home buyers
That's right.
or whatever.
That's right. And I don't think like I remember being advised, gosh, it's really these relationships you build. And I just thought, I don't know if I'm going to do this forever. Now I'm like, I'll probably do this for a long time.
Yeah.
So you just go, it's not even about the people that are in front of me right now because, like Ashley just said, that was a great example. She served them, and now they're 3 transactions down the road. They've used her, and now who knows how many. So sometimes, even like when we do invest in something like a lead, it's like we have no idea. I answered a lead. I didn't. I was leaving for church, and it came up on my phone, and so I didn't even read what they said. I just called or texted immediately. And interestingly enough, thankfully, I didn't read what they said because it was like, I don't need a realtor. I just want this information. And ended up with a gentleman who had done many, many transactions and probably in all thing could have just gotten an attorney and done a transaction, but ended up working with me and it was my largest transaction ever. And has already referred me to, someone to me. And so you go, sometimes it lets you get into maybe a sphere of people that you don't know. That's what I see the value of, right?
Mm,
Because
mhm.
you already have your people, your church, your gym, your this, where the kids played soccer. But how do you get into groups that you're not a part of? Well, sometimes a lead can be a way to do that.
Yeah. Yep. Same thing here. Yep. So, as far as like actual nuts and bolts of money management, from when you start, how long might it take for someone to actually get a paycheck? Like when you start?
I mean, that is a really individual thing, related on how fast, how hard you go at it, how much time you throw at it, lots of things. And then, a little bit of just how things are going. But I would say I was in a unique situation. I needed to make money.
I
Um,
don't think that's unique.
well,
I think people
I
don't.
was suddenly a single person that needed to make money. Let's put it that way. So I was the only income. And so that is a little bit different, right? Most people are married. And so there's a little bit other. And I do remember literally the pain of, all of a sudden, I mean, I was in a place where like there was no more money. And I was like, I could see it coming because I knew I had closings. but it wasn't here yet. I happened to be for work for a big brokerage, and I was about 3 weeks out from a cascade of 3 transactions happening. So I was gonna be real, quote, "rich" soon, but I was not rich for sure. And I remember my broker told me like, "Hey, we can actually advance you some money knowing that this money is coming in." And I don't really like that whole borrowing on time, but it really was my own money coming and they don't charge you anything for it. And so it did buy me about 3 weeks that were tight. I think it is really dependent. I will say that first year or so, it's hard because money comes, money goes. But as soon as you can, as soon as you've created some kind of a stability where you are doing business, I started an LLC, which is not very expensive to start. And then what I began doing is paying myself a paycheck on the first of the month, no matter what. That was what I was working off of. And I created that's my income. Now, I might have had a transaction that month. Maybe I didn't have any. Next month, I had two or three. But that helped me to budget and live my life rather than have these valleys and mountain peaks. And then no matter what you do, whether you do an LLC or not, I definitely recommend allowing yourself to build up a few months so that, because you are self-employed, you can find transactions get moved, things you think that money is coming, but then suddenly there's a snag and it gets moved. Someone dies, there's a septic issue and that's not there. So as quickly as you can create a buffer. And then that way it doesn't really matter. Like if that check hits, great. If it doesn't, you're still in a stable place. And sometimes it takes a little while to build that up if you're starting at zero, but don't spend all that money, kind of sock it away because you're going to want that and it will take the pressure off in the kind of lean moments.
Yeah. 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 And like in general, if you get like a brand new buyer, right? And they want to buy and they tell you what their time frame is, it's pretty fast. At least in the last couple years, you can even with low inventory nationally, you can help them find a house within what do you say, like a week or two, sometimes a month, and then they put in an offer and then at least in Virginia, it's about 30
About
days.
30 days.
And then your brokerage gets the money,
Pay you.
and then they pay you like a week
Yeah.
later. So, like, kind of a best case scenario is maybe 75 days.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, that is definitely, like, movable, but I would say, like, you don't make an assumption you met them today and you're gonna get paid in 30 days. Because even if you found the perfect thing on the first day, it really is a 30 plus day to close. So, yeah, I mean, I would say, if you said 2.5, 3 months is probably and then understanding that some buyers are like, "I'm ready to buy, but I'm not in a rush." Military is great. They wanna buy today. But if you're not, some people are like, "Yeah, we wanna move up or we wanna do this," but it doesn't happen today. So sometimes it's a slower process and you kinda just have to be in for the long haul because it might take 6 or 8 months. If they're looking for a very specific neighborhood or a very specific kind of house,
Or if they're coming from out of
they're
town.
coming from out of town. If they only wanna work around times they can physically be there, you may be doing FaceTime videos from houses to kinda then but our market would move fast enough that I would tell people, like, honestly, it's not gonna be here if we wait another week, right? Like, this is a great house. The reason you love it is a great house. You kinda have to put it under contract if you think you want it and then fly out and see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that reminded me, we haven't even talked about open houses, which
Yes.
I think most people, that's one of the first things they think of is open houses. So what are the benefits of open houses?
Well, I mean, obviously, the benefit of open houses is anyone can come in at any time to just check it out and see it. As agents, honestly, we're encouraged to do it because we might meet buyers that don't yet have other people representing them that we can help. Virginia allows something called dual agency, which means that if you list a house, you could help a buyer. I'm not really comfortable with that, just because I find it's very difficult to have everybody's good interests at heart. I find that that's an impossibility indeed. So I have had the thing where I've represented a open house, a listing, and someone's walked in and they're not represented, but they do want representation. That's very easy to find a colleague that you trust that can work for them, and then that way you can actually get some compensation for that, a referral fee for that, but they are well taken care of and they are legally protected and someone has, we call it a fiduciary responsibility to them. They have responsibility to look after their best interests. and you can do it, for your clients who are selling. Open houses are great just because you just don't know who's gonna come in. They may find it, they may not find it, and it definitely reassures your buyer that we're trying to make this available to anybody who's interested. And there are people that kinda whimsically come in and then they're like, "I'm gonna get my old agent because I wanna do this." Um
And I've had lots of open houses, and I did have one person walk in and say, "Okay, I'm going to buy this house." And in general, open houses don't necessarily sell a house.
Correct.
But as a new agent, that becomes one of the best free ways to get leads, right?
Correct.
Because what you want to do, you don't have any listings yet. And what you want to do is you want to find someone in your brokerage who has a listing and ask, "Can I do an open house for you?" So that agent would represent the sellers, but anyone who came through the door who's unrepresented, you could pick up as a potential client. And they may not buy that house,
Correct. They
but
probably won't.
they probably won't, just, statistically, but then you have time to build rapport with them during the open house. And then you could ask them, "Well, I'd like to show you some other properties because it doesn't sound like this is the one." Right. And so
Absolutely.
that's a great way to spend your Saturdays, your Sunday afternoons, even sometimes weekdays.
Correct, correct. No, it really is. It's really an opportunity to work as a buyer's agent and to pick up potential people, and it's free, right? It's time. It's a time
It's just
investment,
your time.
but it's free, and it helps you practice, especially as a new agent, coming familiar with a house, being able to talk to people, being able to find out what are they looking for. So it's good practice too.
Yeah. And then going back to door knocking.
Tell me.
So I'm really big into statistics, and like, I think they reveal underlying truth. So when I was a new agent, I heard that door knocking actually has the highest receptivity rate of any kind of marketing beside a direct referral.
Sure.
Right. And I was like, well, why am I wasting time calling people? Why am I wasting time doing this or that or the other thing? And so I paired that with the open house idea, and one of the agents had property that they needed someone to do open houses for. So what I did was I did the open house, but I made a little invite and I went around to all the neighbors in the whole neighborhood, and I knocked on all their doors and invited them to come to the open house. Lots of times neighbors want to see inside a house. And I said, and this isn't, you're welcome to come, but you might know someone who wants to move into your neighborhood because it's a great neighborhood, right? So then from there, I got 3 other listings of people who are
Wow.
like, "She's selling her house for that much? Well,
I
maybe
could
I
get
want to
more.
sell
Yeah.
my house." Yeah. Or like, "My house looks better," or whatever it is. And so that's a way to like kind of springboard from an open house to additional clients.
That's
So
great.
now you know my secret.
That's great. Well, that's so interesting you say that because I just did that. I ended up with a client that I helped here and in Williamsburg, and they had a house to sell in Virginia Beach. And so when I did their open house, I did bring little flyers to all the neighbors and introduce my and I do have one person that's talking about selling and buying. And so, yeah, again, these are free ways as a new agent that you have potential clientele, right? As sellers or buyers. So, yeah, absolutely do the free stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything free is good. Yeah, and sometimes buying leads, you're just throwing money down the drain
You just don't
because
know.
you
Yeah.
have no idea what's
Mhm.
gonna come of it. And a lot of times it's more of like how the market is doing as to whether or not the leads are
Are good.
legitimately good leads or not. Yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to think, what have I not thought of? What have we not talked about?
Well, we kinda went over it's an easy, quote, "easy" career to get into relatively quickly. The education's pretty simple. You can pass the test, choose a good brokerage, and take your time. Ask those questions about I left a good brokerage to go to what I think is a better brokerage that I'm at, and it offers compensation in more ways. There's a couple avenues and that's unique, not typical in real estate. So look into that. It doesn't seem important at the beginning, but it will eventually be important to you. What is the cap? What is the greatest percentage you can make? And what do you get for that from the brokerage, right? Make your own spreadsheet. What do you get and figure out the dollar amount. The brokerage I'm at now does not input my listings, which, at the beginning seemed really overwhelming because I'd always had an admin input my listings. But when I thought about the hourly rate of putting in a listing and if that took me an hour or two and I made, let's just say X amount more on every transaction I made, it was like a no-brainer. to learn how to do that or hire anybody to put in. I mean, it's literally just data entry to put it in and me to check it and send it in. Um, you know, when you're making 0 money, it doesn't seem important, but when you're making more money, it is more important, right?
Mm.
So a 5% difference or a 10% difference or a 20% difference, that could translate to tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think I just did want to circle back to, kind of the content on that initial test and the things that people worry about. As a homeschool mom, you've probably outsourced the high school math piece, right? Like that is one thing I feel like people
Yes, we all
outsource
did.
for various reasons. But real estate math is actually super easy, and if you know percentages, then you're golden. And even when you go on like national Facebook groups of like how to become a realtor or whatever, people are like biting their nails over percentages. And it's like, no, I taught my child this in third grade and
Right.
back to seventh grade. And then we had to do it again in 10th grade. Absolutely. I try to say this in every episode. I think homeschool moms are rock stars. They can do anything and
Yes.
everything. And real estate really helps with that, right?
Mhm.
If you've taught your kids Latin, you know most of the legal words. So, there isn't a lot of vocab that you have to learn as a full adult coming
Correct.
into real estate.
The education is not that hard. It's gonna be how you educate yourself post the test that's gonna make you good at what you do. And a lot of the skills that you've learned, the character traits that you've learned and grown with your kids are going to be the very same things that you're going to apply. If you've been able to be around a moody teenager, you're absolutely going to be able to be around an anxious client or a husband and wife where they have different goals and different wishes about how this is going to go down. And you'll just navigate that carefully like you do the rest of life. So a lot of that is applicable. Like Ashley said, there is no rocket science in this. A lot of the number stuff we refer to the lender to do. So typically that's kind of, we didn't really talk about that. That's like the first step when someone wants to buy a house is getting them with a lender to make sure that they qualify what they qualify for. So we're looking for the right thing for them. And they're really dealing with the numbers. And it might take you following up to even figure out what that is, but that's it. You don't have to do that part.
And if you're great with numbers, then you should listen to the episode with Paula Farino because she's a loan officer and she talks through kind of the nuts and bolts of how you get into that. So, yeah. Anything else?
No, I think it's just I think I speak for both of us to say it's been an amazing career, an amazing transition, and, it's very flexible to the seasons of our life too, people end up with a sick parent or a crisis or an opportunity to go on a great trip, and, unlike most jobs, you can leave or you can step out because you have colleagues and people that will cover that, and you have some flexibility. It really is a nice opportunity to have a lucrative career that's pretty fulfilling, and you really get to feel like it's a meaningful what you do for people, but it isn't so constraining that when life's challenges come up, you can't flex. I say it would be very difficult at 56 for somebody to tell me you can't visit your daughters today because it's a work day. You can't drive to Raleigh and help them move. I have helped, 3 sets of children move multiple times, get through graduations, change jobs, parent die, all those things as a real estate agent. And
And your
my
clients never know.
and my clients never know, or if I tell them anything, they're empathetic if I say like, "Hey, I'm doing XYZ. I'll be available by phone and text, but this person is gonna help you today look at homes or whatever." And, most people are real reasonable and understand that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yep. So if you are interested in becoming a realtor, I'm always available to talk to you. But I'm sure Beth would be too because she
Absolutely.
works for a national brokerage that helps you network between states, even, right?
Correct, correct.
So I'm gonna put some of your info on my link tree. Would be happy to talk to you about her brokerage. So as always, like and subscribe, and always remember to shine on.